everyone. Welcome. Happy Monday. I hope you all had a great weekend and looking forward to this week. And we're going to make this week even more super awesome because we're going to talk about open source and we're going to chat with Brian, also known as B Dougie. I'm going to drop his Twitter in the chat in a moment, and there are links in the description below as well. And we're going to learn more about open source. But Brian, please give yourself an intro and then we'll get straight into open source.
Yeah, my name's Brian Douglas. I go by B Dougie, and I failed to actually put my full name in the tagline, but or the lower third. But yeah, you'll find me at B Dougie on Twitter if I'll preemptively scoop you. Actually, no, you got me before I even said it. But yeah, I've been working on this project called OpenSauced. Previously, I worked at GitHub for almost 5 years, leading developer relations. Really just trying to get people to do things like GitHub Actions. Spent a lot of time doing GitHub Actions and speaking at conferences with new contributors and also established contributors. So super honored to be here to talk with your community about what I've been working on for the past 6 months at this point.
That's awesome. I love it that you've jumped onto this full time. So I've got so many questions for you, but maybe let's hear more about this, right? You've got this web page up. It's open source. You've got loads of repos. Some of them approaching like 1K stars as well. But maybe you can talk us through kind of what you're working on, what it's about at a high level, then we'll dig deeper. We've already got some green squares for people as well.
Yeah, so the high level is that we are building a platform to make it easier for companies and projects to find open source contributors. So you're probably like, oh man, I'm not a company or a project. I don't need this. But that's the other half of it, is that we want to find contributors. So if you want to be the best in open source, we're still working on it, but we're going to have a pathway for folks to create accounts, get recommended for contributions, and eventually find jobs to companies that are doing open source. So we partnered with DigitalOcean earlier this year.
Nice.
For Hacktoberfest, and we're able to find out contributions across all of Hacktoberfest and what that looked like for the DigitalOcean team to report back up to their higher ups. This is a common occurrence when you have like a company like an Amazon or a company like a GitHub who hosts these events, and you want to track those contributions in a way that's meaningful but also discoverable. So this is the platform. You mentioned green squares. We're trying to be one step above green squares.
Yeah.
Green squares are great, but like we want to be able to tell a story of where those squares are coming from. And I think there's a lot of cool projects out there that are doing that. And we're just trying to make that easier for companies as well. So I can actually just jump in as well and
Let's
show
do it. Let's do it.
a bit of what we put together as well. So when we shipped this in October, Hacktoberfest, we had just Hacktoberfest repos. Here you can see JavaScript. So caching's an issue right now, so we're just going to take a second to let that show up. But these are all GitHub projects that are repositories that are tagged JavaScript on GitHub. So here you can see the most recent contributions, but let's say you're looking for something with just more than 5 contributors, or maybe the top 100, because you want to see what that looks like. So Free Code Camp's pretty high up there. I think it's like 300 stars at this point. Views got about 200,000. So sort of looking at contributions across the board for the top 100. Actually, let me go back to recent since I already have that one cached. And then the idea here is like, as a maintainer, potential contributor, you'll want to be able to see, what contributions look like. So, yeah, this is all stuff that if anybody's a Redis expert, we'd love to talk to you, because we have to actually implement caching on our API, which is also open sourced as well. API.opensauce.pizza. But yeah, there you go. So yeah, if I haven't looked at this person, it's going to fetch it and then gather and filter all their projects together. But we have the ability to now see all their contributions in one place. And This is like just the first step. We just launched early this month. But I think if I go to our beta, I can actually show. Actually, one thing I could show is I could show our Hacktoberfest insights as well. This data will actually it'll be a little messed up because we're not at Hacktoberfest anymore. But I can tell you it was 500,000 PRs during the month of October, so about 510,000, and quite a few contributors. So just the idea there is just like getting the ability to see what's happening across Hacktoberfest is something that was always a challenge for the team, and we were able to do that for them pretty easily. So this is what an actual verified user will look like. Well, we're gonna have some other features here. We can actually provide updates. So a lot of times you get a contribution, but I think what we're gonna try to encourage a lot more is blog post. I think the best first contribution could be a blog post about how to use the project or how to onboard the project. So we'll be working with some other projects and companies to empower that.
Awesome.
So I could show some like Figma designs and stuff like that. Like I could also show you the issues that we have lined up, and the entire roadmap's all open source as well.
That's awesome. How do you manage your roadmaps? Can you show us? Is that GitHub project boards?
Yeah. So there's a repo
Because I'm doing ours, so I want to try to steal some ideas from you. How the pros do it.
Yeah, so I took this 100% from GitHub. So GitHub has an open source roadmap as well. So we have a link in the README, but this is our project board as well. So
got you.
You can see Q1 with January to March contributor profiles. I should probably do this today. I failed to even open an issue, so you can track it. We open sourced the repo mid-December, and so I've been catching up, trying to make sure everything's up to date. But yeah, we're still sort of catching up as well. But yeah, so the roadmap also, I should probably move this over because we never shipped this. But yeah, so this is our public roadmap. This will change probably in the next week. Really trying to keep it obtainable and approachable based on our current contributor team.
Sure.
We actually have, at this point, we have got 6 people who are working with us full time. I'd say really 5 that are writing code. And that's been the help of fundraising. So we did take some angel money, and we did set up a Delaware C Corp to have a proper structure for a company, a US based company, and that's helped us to sustain us till now. But we do have pricing that we've implemented as well.
That's awesome. It's great to hear so many open source projects now are getting funding, and they can actually, pay their main core contributors and stuff. People are working on it full time. I think it's just awesome. It's hearing this more and more over the last kind of 1 to 2 years, and it's great. So that is awesome. Was it a hard process, out of curiosity, without going into too much detail? But was it like a hard process?
Yeah, I'm happy. I mean, I'm happy to share as much detail as everybody's interested in. But yeah, so. Working at GitHub, I think what really helped me was I had a lot of folks who were championing what I was doing internally at GitHub as well as externally. So when I had the idea of like actually building a company around this, I did ask from VCs. I didn't get any VC funding, but asking VCs for advice on how to approach this. I would say folks like OSS Capital it's an open source focus VC firm. And they're great because they've Cal.com, they invested in the Remix prior to the acquisition of Shopify. They invested there. Okay. So they've been invested in quite a few open source projects. So highly recommend checking out their portfolio for cool open source projects that are sustained through VC funds. But most of the LPs, and when I say LPs, these are like partners inside the fund, are all open source experts. So I was happy to meet folks who were able to be the sort of groundbreaking maintainers of Linux distros and stuff like that, and also Kubernetes and cloud services. So everyone gets it, and everyone gets that like sometimes funding is necessary for open source projects.
That's awesome. That's really good. So just to give a shout out to some people in the chat, and then we have a couple of questions. So great to have. I see John was first, and we have Kyle. Pritam, Chrissy's here, Tom, Jason, Harsh, who else? Carl, Ula, I'll say Morgan. It's easier for me to pronounce. Might be your second name, but I'll just say Morgan. It's easier. Apologies if that's wrong. And Sean as well. So Chrissy asks a very interesting question. Where does Linkfree rank on here? For the previous one that you were showing, yes. Is it possible to get some sort of stats on it? I don't know.
Yeah, so we're not currently doing ranking. So we do sort by stars, and that's just by default, just to have something that defaults to, because we're really focused on discoverability. But I will say that Linkfree does show up on the top pretty regularly because I think the onboarding experience includes a contribution.
Yes.
So during Hacktoberfest, Linkfree was like, I would say top 10 for most active during Hacktoberfest, and I think it might be that engagement, but. I think if I do, is it EddieHub? We could just look at Linkfree by itself.
Okay. Yeah, EddieHub community.
Community.
Yeah, EddieHub was taken, unfortunately, by someone's user account that's not used. You're doing anything. It's just all like empty. But
I probably got the.
It's camel case. So it'll be. I don't know if that makes a difference or not.
It doesn't. I just missed the U, I think.
Oh, okay, got you.
There we go. So here's link free, and I could filter just by clicking on this. This is also, if I wanted to, which might even be better, if I log in, I can create an EddieHub specific dashboard. So what our focus is that if you have projects that you're considering following, what I'll call this is EddieHub. And then I'll do
capital H, capital H.
Oh, there we go.
I don't want people to copy in the chat. I'll do other stuff wrong.
Yeah, you know what? Let me. It'll be easy to copy and paste because I'm gonna struggle with spelling everything.
No worries.
So we'll get the link free project, also camel cased. And the idea here is like you imagine you have like maybe 3 EddieHub community repos. I'll just add the one.
Yeah.
You can create a custom page, insights page, which will be all the way down here. And there, it's going to take a sec. There we go. And here I can see all contributions for just this one repo. The idea is that you have multiple repos. Wow, this is a lot for one repo. But here we can see, all the contributions for all the EddieHub contributors. So it looks like, I don't know if this is a accurate number, but 371. Looks like it's down from the last 30 days. Actually, no, this is.
I thought it would be up, but.
Yeah. I'll have to look into that number and see if that's correct. And honestly, I'm going to open issue on that because that's basically, it shouldn't be down or up. I think you just had 66 new contributors in the last 30 days. I don't think we actually have the logic to do up and down here. But I will have to double check that because that might be. I know we moved pretty fast last year with some pretty new contributors. So I don't know if we actually got that correctly. But these are all the PRs. 812 have been closed or merged. So that's collective filter there. And then we have 59 that are open. And this is not too bad, like in the last 10 days. So you don't really have a lot of trailing contributions.
We've been really good. The maintainers have been amazing. A big shout out to the maintainers. A lot of them are in the chat. They've been really, really good at getting those either closed or merged. A lot of the time merged, but they might be merged to a temporary branch and then tweaked a bit and then merged in because sometimes the author of the pull request either doesn't have time to finish it off, and they've put a lot of effort in already. We don't want to lose their contribution. We want them to get the credit. So a lot of the time we do that. But I feel I'm quite behind already, as in this doesn't look too bad, but I'm like, oh my God, I'm so stressed. We've got so many to merge.
60 PRs is that's a lot of PRs, but when you look at collectively what's going on in the last, and this is the last 30 days. That's a lot of PRs in the last 30 days. But what's also pretty cool is that we can see, and this is something that's like usually challenging to see inside of GitHub, which is all contributions the last 30 days in a list of contributors. So looks like we do have one person who's got multiple contributions in multiple places.
Chris has just arrived in the chat as well. So excellent. Perfect timing.
Yeah, so this is amazing. This is a good timing as well. Yeah, but the idea here is that I can go into Christian's their actual profile.
Krish, now, by the way, I think.
Oh, Krish.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. The non-vowels is first look. I'm going to mess it up. Also looks like they got a contribution in the 4C site. So shout out to Francesco.
Yeah, as long as Krish, as long as you're contributing more to ours, that's fine. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah, but what's really cool is you can see comparison from contributions across multiple projects too as well, which is also, if it's a different org, sometimes it's hard to see. So we will have, if you saw in our roadmap, we will have comparison tooling. So think of like you just want to see what your contributions versus this contribution, this repo versus that repo. That stuff we're going to be setting up and happy to get feedback. We're currently we're almost in the design phase. We have actually my older brother is designing right now for us. So currently is like working through a backlog, which is going to be pretty healthy for a while. But what I was getting at is, so if Chris was an OpenSauced member, they would get a colorful banner on their page, as well as a couple other features.
Got you. A couple of questions in the chat, and I've got one as well. So Carl asks, how are the charts generated? Is it by the GitHub API?
So no.
Okay.
But it will be sort of soon. So currently what we're doing is we're actually, and as a reminder, I worked at GitHub for 5 years. So something like this would be pretty heavy on the GitHub API, fetching repos across contributions across multiple repos. I'll let you in a little secret for everyone listening. We're actually cloning repos and taking Git commits and identifying pull requests. So it's a bit overkill for, especially since you can do this with the API. But for the reason that is because the rate limiting is a little intensive for something like this. So we wouldn't be able to show any of this. Like we couldn't show Krish's contributions across repos and list them that way. And then hopefully eventually cache them if we did the API. The API basically is going to give us avatars, and it's going to give us PR head branches. So we do need to look at the PR head. So every time you do a commit and you do a merge commit or a squash commit, I prefer squash, but I don't blame anybody who does merge commits. You can identify which one's the PR and the PR number if you do it through GitHub. So that's how we're doing it. You also do that through Git. My actual interview question at GitHub was to clone a repo and using only Git to fetch frequency of contributions. So it's all through. You can do it all through Bash. You can do it through Node. You can do it through Ruby. I actually did all three because I interviewed twice at GitHub. That's the other. I didn't get the job the first time, but I was able to solve the problem the second time. So that was nice.
Nice. That sounds great. Okay, so a couple more questions as well. So do the easy one first. Krish says, can I contribute to open source? The answer is no. Contribute to EddieHub. I'm just joking. Of course you can. Yes, you can. And then Carl asks, is it public? Can I see my stats as well? Which leads on to my question, which is, you mentioned earlier about having like a paid service. So what, if I understand correctly, and what would be paying for it? What do you get in addition, if that makes sense? And what do you get on the free tier?
We do not want to charge individual users. So the folks that our entire landing page is selling to companies to do open source. So one thing that, so the quick answer is a public yes. You can connect with your GitHub and you can set up your own account. We are currently adding the link to go to your own profile. It's surprisingly enough, we don't have the link to go to your own profile, but you can just manipulate the URL, put your GitHub handle, so /user/your name, and you can see your contributions. Just give it a second because it might need to cache. We're not really optimized for 1,000 users yet, but we'll get there eventually. Have about 1,000 people who have signed up. But what I was going to get at is that the pricing is really focused. If you work at a company or an organization, we will provide data for you to identify what's happening in your world and your contributors. And the reason for that is that there's 280 million repos on GitHub, and there's about 200,000 that have more than 5 contributors. So our goal is actually grow contributors and also grow the value for open source at companies. So we've been working, and I'll share a quick story too as well. So yeah, please, everyone who's listening, click the login button, provide feedback. The repo is open source.
Oh, and let me share your YouTube channel in the chat as well. It should be in the description, but it should be in the description below. But I will just share it just in case.
Yeah, so I was going to talk about Impura real quick. Impura is an enterprise company, never did any open source. The founder has been working on this for 5 years. Actually, Ankur just announced they got acquired by Figma a couple weeks ago as well. Yeah, and they actually had an open source project. They partnered with Hugging Face, which is the team that built Stable Diffusion, and they wanted to build a generative AI for their product. Their product was take a PDF and then identify where in the PDF you can input fields, and they wanted to automate that through AI. So they built that. Ankur is an engineer, graduated from university years ago, and in 2 weekends he built this cool tool to open source and share it to his community and customers. He had not done any open source prior, and when they open source a project, they doubled their customer acquisition. So they were paying for Google AdWords exclusively to grow their customer base. And when they open sourced a project, they were getting twice as many new customers to the open source project as they were through paying for Google AdWords. So
that's awesome.
I mentioned that because one, yes, we do a podcast called The Secret Sauce. We talk with founders and maintainers about their open source strategy as well. So if you're interested in hearing stories from folks like Lee at Next, I do encourage you to just give it a listen. Most of them are less than an hour long. And I mentioned that because that's our strategy. Is we want to go to companies like Impero and teach them how to do open source properly and how to maintain that, because not every company is treated equally. Not everyone using GitHub the same way, and we're trying to sort of level the playing field. So if you go through EddieHub and you're like, hey, I've been working on the Leafy project, I want to like expand into maybe something like Python, or expand into JavaScript, or expand into more projects to contribute to. I At the end of the day, like even with open source, like my hope is that people can graduate out of open source contributors to go contribute to other projects and eventually find jobs through that. So the other half of what we're focused on is like we do want to help discover companies that are hiring through open source.
And so many are as well. As a question we get asked a lot by a lot of our clients is, where can we hire some of these, open source engineers, because they're 100%. All our clients are 100% open source. So that we were thinking of doing a job board of just roles that are 100% remote, as in not just like remote US or remote UK, but 100% remote and 100% open source as well. So that's something we've started doing, but haven't had a lot of time to focus. But those stories look really good. Hopefully one day I get famous enough, I can appear on your series as well.
So we've been I wanted to do in person conversations. I'm out here in the San Francisco Bay Area, so there's a lot of folks that I can talk to, and
yeah,
I think some of these stories aren't shared enough, like with Replit. So Amjad Masad, he was based in Jordan, and his idea 10 plus years ago was he would go to college or university, and every time he would have to go to the computer lab because he didn't have his own computer. So his idea was like, hey, what if I could like build an application that I could just log in on the web browser, and then I could just start writing code? Because every time he had to go to the computer lab, he had to reinstall every single thing he needed. And we didn't have like code spaces like we have today. So he built the basic of that, and then he open sourced it, and he called it Replit. And no, actually he called it JS REPL. And then that JS REPL was then used by Codecademy. And Codecademy reached out to him as an open source maintainer and said, hey, we're building this company. Do you want to move to New York? And they moved him to New York to work on Codecademy full time.
Oh, wow.
And then eventually Facebook moved him to the West Coast to work on, well, he worked on a couple different things, but eventually got to the point where he worked on React Native. So he helped build a compiler for React Native, and then eventually took the open source project that was around for so long, renamed it Replit, and was able to build a company around that.
That is such an awesome story. Yeah, I definitely need to catch up on the ones that I've missed. I've got a flight to Thailand in a couple of weeks where I need to like download lots of stuff. So I'll just like binge watch on your content on that series. That sounds great. We've got some more questions as well. So we asked about the public one. Can people see their stats? Chrissy asked, can we create an open source account now? Yes, you can. And that ties into my question is where do you host your applications?
So currently, OpenSauced, the landing page, the front end interface is all Netlify.
Okay.
And the reason for that, I used to work at Netlify, so I have like a free forever, free friends and family account. Okay. And then our API. So we do have API that OpenSauced.pizza. This is what's powering a lot of this. It's all built on Nest.js. So Nest.js is, if anybody's familiar with Angular, it feels very Angular-esque to build a API. So here you can play around with them and test all the stuff. This is all hosted on DigitalOcean. So DigitalOcean gave us some free credits to get started, and for the DigitalOcean project we did, and that's what got us the fuel the API itself. So
that's awesome.
That kind of summarizes it. Yeah.
No, that sounds great. And on DigitalOcean, any particular service? The reason why I ask is I've moved from a VM to Kubernetes, now to apps. Now I'm probably going to move to Civo for Kubernetes again. But interested to know what service you're using.
I think we're actually just using Droplets.
Using Droplet, okay. Yeah,
and this is, I didn't actually do the infrastructure. I actually had an open source contributor I've been working with for the past couple of years on OpenSauced. And they're just way smarter than I am to do all that stuff. So they actually came on full time earlier actually around August, and they've been helping us do all infrastructure. So shout out to Vortex.
Awesome. That sounds good. It's always good to get support. And yeah, I'm aware of Nest.js from Carl as well, who introduced me to Nest.js. But we're using more on Link, we're using Next.js to again keep it a bit simpler. We found that Nest.js being TypeScript, being kind of Angular focused, and all the dependency injection kind of scared a lot of people off.
Yeah, we're actually we are using Next.js for this project.
Okay.
So this is all Next.js, and I would say our landing page is also Next.js. So we are consuming a third-party API. So our API is hosted separately, and the reason for that is that we want API to OpenSauced.pizza to be a tool that people can build on top of. So we have the data, so we want to be able to approach anybody who has a cool idea. They can go ahead and build on top of OpenSauce.
No, makes sense. Hey Yuri, how you doing? Chris said they've signed up. Okay, and want some pizza.
Excellent.
So Carl's asking how the Git clones and stuff are handled. The demand permanently running daemon or something, crawling data. Yeah, how do you do that? That's quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and that's also a bit of our secret sauce too, as well. So,
Okay.
yeah, we've got services. We're actually going to be. We should be switching to more of a cloud hosted like Kubernetes to be able to do all this stuff.
Okay.
But for right now, it's a pretty naive implementation that's maintaining the Git clones and fetching the latest data.
No, that makes sense. You can always improve and add to it each time. And yeah, Carl's right. Our API in EddieHub that runs the live maps and other things is Nest.js that Carl wrote. And Carl liked your design, by the way. And he's just redesigned the Finder project on EddieHub, and
Nice.
it looks really slick like yours as well. So. And Shabangi is also saying your landing page looks awesome. I'm the worst designer, so I bought Tailwind and I use the paid components and make them worse.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
they look really good, and I'm like, let me add my own kind of tweak to it, and they end up looking worse. So I need to work on that. I definitely need some help.
Yeah, I love Tailwind. Actually, a lot of this is Tailwind as well. So we also, our design system's open source as well. So currently embedded in the Insights repo, which we haven't got to the repo as well. So we're using Storybook for our design system.
Nice.
And the one thing that's kind of helped us out is that we did create some consistency as we were starting. I guess after learning how to write code for the past like 5+ years while doing OpenSauce, we actually, and I didn't really mention this, we had a whole other product for OpenSauce. OpenSauce used to be more of like a CRM to maintain your open source contributions. And it was useful for me and useful for a core group of folks. But at the end of the day, like people wanted more discoverability. So we started from scratch back in June. So in June, I sort of assembled a team just like the Avengers of all the folks who were involved in OpenSauce. And well, not all of them, just a handful of folks I knew had some availability. And yeah, we ended up throwing together our design system and kind of keeping it really consistent. We do have some things we've been talking about that aren't consistent. So we're going back and fixing that. But that's just another contribution, which I did want to take some time just to talk about how to like contribute. And
yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Time's running away. We're going for 30 minutes already. So let's jump in. People want green squares.
Yeah. Just a reminder, everyone's been asking. I'll just reiterate. Hit the sign in button up here, connect to GitHub. That actually creates your account. Very simple. We do capture your email. So I just want to be upfront with that. It does kind of say that when you do sign in, and that's really just to send updates. We haven't sent any updates yet, but we'll get there eventually. We're testing some email tools. But going back to the OpenSauce repo, so in OpenSauce our org, we tend to have pretty consistent contributing MDs and READMEs as well. So if you're interested in our setup for design systems, Atomic Design is what we chose. It's just how we sort of name and separate the concerns. Okay. So atoms are going to be your smallest like buttons and text components, and then molecules will be the combination of buttons and text. Okay. And then the step up, I forgot what the next thing is, but
we need to work on ours as well. This is great to hear this because we've got buttons all over the place at different designs. We need to put those into a small component, add them to storybooks. I love it. This is great motivation for us. So thank you.
Yeah, I think we're actually talking about renaming it to more primitives and components because the atoms, it seems to be too much of a mental shift for folks. So I think primitives and components is what we're going to go with in the future, just to make it clear. But as far as like issues, for the Insights project, we don't do any good first issues. It's intentional. And that's
Okay.
really because for this project, this is the project that we will have customers on. We do have customers now. So we want to make it consistent. We do have a whole nother project that I point people to, and I have a standard reply for folks. If you're looking for good first issues, this project is more the explore page for OpenSauced. And this is where we put all our good first issues. So if you're looking for more up and coming projects, so these are going to be like, these will fall more in the scope of good first repos. These are projects that just got started, usually in the last 30 days, usually have like less than 100 stars, and are usually looking for people to help collaborate with them on it. So that's what Hot Open Sauce Pizza is. So shout out to you, Josh, who maintains TypeScript. TS Lint. He does contribute to TypeScript, but he doesn't maintain it. So Freudian slip. But yeah, this is a bunch of cool projects you can look for, but also a cool place for you to sign into. And it's going to be the same sign in for Insights. Is the same sign in for Hot. So you create an account both places at the same time. And yeah, so these are places you can upvote as well. So we haven't put a lot of effort in marketing around this. It's just if I live stream, this is the project I pull content from when I live stream and what I work on while I'm live streaming. But yeah, these are our issues. We are using pretty heavily using milestones, which get into like where if you want to contribute, paper cuts is where our earlier contributors can work on. So if you're newer to the project, paper cuts is a place to go to. We kind of reserve for the actual full-time team work on user profiles. Like these are all the features we want to ship with deadlines. Which doesn't mean you can't contribute to it. It just means that there's a higher bar of expectation. So if you haven't really learned our design system or haven't really learned how we do testing, recommendation is go to paper cuts. And paper cuts is going to be something you could do within less than a day. It's going to be a small fix. So like, looks like hover and highlight. I don't know what this is. Oh, this actually needs design. But we want to implement being able to hover and show context on the graph, which doesn't exist right now. So that is that's something that would be like a small fix that someone could just like learn quickly if they've been around. The other half of it is we do have a triage team, which I did. It's funny because I mentioned this person. We already merged her stuff in. They agreed to join our triage team, which I'll showcase that as well. So the triage team, we have some documentation in the repo on it, but we have a team specifically that can assign themselves to issues, that can help triage and review PRs. And usually, if you're coming through and you're doing some good work, or you created 2 PRs in the same week, I usually ask you, hey, do you want to join the triage team? So I'm sending them an invite. And looks like a 2-factor authentication real quick. No one sniped my my 2-factor code. I'm sharing way too much.
No worries.
Sorry, I'm doing the work on stream, but I told her yesterday I was going to put her on.
Good example. No, it's good to do a good example. I love that. Actually got some questions in the chat as well. Carl says, do you prefer Twitch or YouTube for streaming? Carl, I said you should choose the one you want to stream to. And I know you don't stream yet, but I'm hoping you do. But I think, Brian, you are more on Twitch for streaming, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitch for streaming. I have a plan to start doing YouTube streams. Yes. Twitch is like where I could be way more free form, a lot of dead silence, a lot of more just chatting with the community. I do plan on doing some more discovery open source projects. So I'll say it out loud so I can commit myself to it. But what I want to do is like start building stuff with open source projects. So like learn an open source project and then try to build onboarding documentation for them. So a lot of times I'm finding a lot of projects and discovering them, but they're brand new. And the best thing you could do is like your first contribution can be like, hey, this is how you install it. This is how you get it working. This is the thing that was missing. And I tend to do a lot of that for projects, not intentionally, just like I like using new things. So I want to give back. So live streaming first contributions is the goal. And I'll probably do that on YouTube.
Okay, sounds good. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, kind of like speed running video games. Speed running contributions is I don't know what I'm going to call it, but that's the gimmick.
That does sound super interesting. Looking forward to that. When are you planning on starting?
I actually wrote a whole plan for doing it, and in the next few weeks, probably we'll start slow, and once I get my bearings, and we'll start announcing it more often.
Sounds good. And Shabangi says, how did you come up with the logo? That's a really good question because we might need the logo for Linkfree. And how do you come up with it?
Yeah, so I'm also not a designer. So this logo, which we've been collectively calling it candy corn, but it's supposed to meant to be a pizza. We actually let me see if I can open up the press page. It's hard because I removed all instances of the logo from the site, but it's kind of hard to see. Our original logo is this. So OpenSauced, and this was something I had a friend local. Actually, had a friend was helping move house, and then his roommate was a designer, and he
Okay.
introduced me to his roommate, and his roommate built this for me. So the inspiration is basically the word open, and then this is meant to be like a kind of like a Sharpie if you were like doing graffiti on a
Hmm.
bathroom. That was like what I asked for, and this is what I got. So our now logo is the A in sauced, and we're gonna re-implement that
Got
into our
you.
brand. We just had to we had to clean up a lot of the brand assets because
Yeah.
it was a little bit all over the place after just years and years of me just messing around with it.
Yeah.
So like this is now our new logo, and then we also had some help with the I knowing my limitation of not being a designer. I just need someone to like show me the ropes, and then we'll do it.
Yeah.
And so we ended up reaching out to one of my brother's friends to help design our landing page.
It looks really, really good. I love it. And you got loads of great feedback from people about it as well. And Carl says they are going to live stream. I don't mind if it's Twitch or YouTube. Definitely do it, Carl. I will watch. I can't wait. Super, super excited. So when are you going to start that, Carl? You're going to do it. Hopefully you can mention in the chat and we can hold you accountable. Brian's here as well.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll give Carl a week. By the end of next weekend or the coming weekend,
Yeah.
I'll give you a week.
If I could say, like, there's one thing about the best way to learn for me is teaching. I don't have to be an expert on something, but when I started live streaming and like putting myself out there and having the conversation, I get a lot of like, oh yeah, do it this way, or it looks like
Yeah.
you typoed something. So like when you normally would spend hours trying to fix this thing because it was a typo, having a community to watch and hang out with you has been pretty rewarding. I would say that there's a bit of learning curve being able to like talk and code at the same time, which I don't know. Do you do any live coding on your streams?
I do, yes. Not as much as I would like to, so I want to do more. I started doing them more on Discord calls, so therefore people can kind of, rather
Yeah,
than
that's a
type
good
in the
space.
answers, they can actually kind of chat to me and maybe even screen share. So, yeah, I'm just trying some things out, but still live streaming, once, twice a week.
Yeah, and I would say that Discord is a good place to even practice. Like, I know there was question was like Twitch or YouTube, but Discord, setting up a small Discord call with like four other folks and like talking through stuff is actually a great way to practice on that skill.
Yeah, it's true. I think it takes a lot of practice at the beginning, definitely. Sorry, I interrupted you. Okay, back to you, Brian, and then I'll catch
Yeah,
up
yeah.
on the chat.
Yeah, so basically, we have the triage team. Triage team is basically folks who are looking to be up and coming contributors to OpenSauce, and that kind of unblocks you to eventually like get more mentorship. I would say on how to like build other features in the project. And I do want to take a step back too as well. And like our triage team is I'm extremely proud of because like as I had this idea, one of the hardest things is like growing a team in a company because like you don't know what you don't know where everyone's coming from, and like the best thing you do, well, the best thing we did is we reached out to our community to grow our team. So I mentioned we have got 3 full-time folks, and then we got 3 contractors that are full-time. And because we raised some money, we also sold some contracts for like DigitalOcean and GitHub. We were able to bring on contractors full time. So like folks like Sunday's like one of our best contributors. He was doing some pretty good work for us over the summer. He also, it's funny because like we do have folks come from the EddieHub community as well. So we do
Yay.
have some consistent contributors who've
Nice.
sort of found us and we've shown them the ropes. But the best thing Sunday did is he started contributing to the hot project, which I was showing earlier. And I asked him, hey, your code's really good, and you seem to like have a really good knack for building React components. Could you help us work like full time for the next 2 months? And it wasn't really planned to be like a full time forever, but or full time until he says goodbye. Because I think even with a job, like people do graduate and move on
Yeah.
and find other places, which I'm totally fine with. But we pulled him on full time because he was just showing consistency. We've never met in person. Sunday's we've met on Zoom calls, but Sunday's based in Nigeria. And what I'm super proud of is like he's now building most of our components on the Insights
Wow.
page. So we brought him
That's
full
awesome.
time. We also brought in some other folks through All in Open Source as well as MLH fellows. So we
Okay.
do have an MLH fellow that we did bring on full time as well. Uh,
Awesome.
he is currently in exams for university, so he's taking this month off, but he'll come back to work with us next month. But same deal, like which showed up, was very consistent, had some good code quality, and like where you would normally have to interview folks in multiple rounds and give them like a small project. Our small project is just do a PR on OpenSauced, and so far we've contracted everyone to do to sort of do a pseudo interview with us. So we'll pay you on contract to build a specific feature that's a little bit more.
Nice.
And then based on that interaction, we've been bringing people on full time, which is it's been we don't have the bandwidth or the funds to bring on more people full time at the moment. But the hope is that we scale our team through open source. And what we're really trying to do is just practice what we're preaching, which is finding the best open engineers in open source for companies. We're doing the same thing.
I love that. That's great. I think that's awesome, and it's great that also people don't have to. They don't have to be engineers to contribute or to add value. They could be project managers. They could help, remove duplicate issues, ask questions. Is this issue clear or not? It could be help writing automated tests. Do you use any automated tests for your projects yet?
We do have and I'll go into our PRs if I can now. So I'm at the point where I have too many tabs. So yeah, we're using GitHub Actions to do automated tests. We do have Playwright.
Okay, nice. Same as us as well.
And I honestly, I can't remember if we have Playwright in the hot repo. I don't know if we've got it in the Insights repo yet,
Okay.
which is, I think there's an issue open for it. So happy to get people's feedback and thoughts on that. But I'll just go to this fixed table responsive bug. Not sure what's going on here. Haven't reviewed this yet. But we have things like we have a GitHub action called PR compliance.
Okay.
So if you haven't updated your, so we have like these little flags to check to see what type of contribution it is. Is it a refactor? Is it a design update? Is it a bug fix? So if it's just a legitimate feature, which it actually isn't, it should be actually a fix.
Okay.
Which I'll go ahead and I'll fix this.
You'll fix the fix.
Yeah. So it should be a fix because we treat automation differently for depending on the flag. So if it's a fix, it bumps the Simmer version up 0.001. If it's a feature, it bumps the minor release up. And we do everything to beta as well. So beta is our default branch. And the reason for that is we want to be able to QA stuff on beta. So we do have automated tests through GitHub Actions, which I was scrolling down here. Obviously, we have a lot of conversation. Shout out to NSD as well, who's also part of our triage team, up and coming OpenSauced contributor. He helps to review. That's the other half of the triage team. They review PRs. They're sort of like the first ones in. So it looks like we just got a change. Oh, I just did the change. And then we have some testing that happens as well as a deploy to Netlify. But going on the beta. We also like if I need some extra eyes, I'll just drop in OpenSauced triage. Oh.
And you can tag the team. Okay, nice.
Yeah, so I tag the team and say, hey, this is ready for review. And this is if I know there's something that's been quite difficult for us to fix, like the caching. Like when we have caching, I will definitely ping the team and be like, hey, caching's ready to get a review from you. Please take a look. Try to break it, really. Like figure out some edge cases because like we do have you try to think everything when you're writing code and also in code review. But what's great is like when you have different skills and different folks from different backgrounds, they can expose things that maybe were out of sight, out of mind.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes when someone exposes something, then it gives them more ideas. To give an example, Krish did a pull request to the Linkfree project a couple of days ago. And I said, Krish looks good. I'm going to just merge it into a temporary branch because I've noticed a boundary condition that I want to fix. So I fixed the boundary condition and got Krish to review it and said, yeah, but you've also now missed this boundary condition. So it kind of conversation just sparks so many ideas. So then I fixed the thing that I missed. But it's super interesting. I have a question about your beta, because we do have beta in Linkfree as well, but we don't use it very much. We usually go straight to main and do more for the bigger things go via beta. So my question is on your branching strategy. When you go from a feature branch or bug fix branch and you go to beta, do you squash and then do you squash again once you go to main, but then you're going to squash multiple features and bugs from beta to main?
No. So what we do is, and I can actually go on to, I don't want to create a branch because then everyone's going to think that I'm going to cut a release. But
Sure.
we create a new branch, and we go from beta to main, and then from there, we do a merge.
Okay.
We squash to beta, and then
Got
we
you.
merge to main. And the reason the merge to main is because all these PR. So here's our update to next 13. Every PR is going to be a squash PR commit, and that will get merged into history. So we don't want to delete that history for folks who made contributions, or else it will look like I created all those cool features in a squash. Yeah. We do that, and then we basically pull we merge back into beta after you go to main, so that way the history is consistent. Because we have a lot of very specific releases that are automated, so none of our releases are created manually. They all get sorted, and this is why we have the flags as well. So if you have the bug, then this is clearly a bug. Here's a code refactoring. We had to rename a table for consistency reasons.
Okay.
Looks like this is when we got the upgrade to next 13.
How was Playwright, by the way? Not Playwright. Storybook with next 13, because I think ours stopped working. Is it? So we turned it off and we want to bring it back. Is it?
We actually haven't tested. I did see your I think it was a tweet or a mention. Actually, I haven't even looked into that, to be honest.
Okay.
But we aren't actually heavily using Storybook. We put everything there. We eventually want to move it to its separate repo because we want to create an OpenSauced design system. So this is our design system. We haven't really been updated, keeping it up to date, but it might actually be the catalyst for us to move everything to its own repo because we want to automate this to go to NPM. So you can NPM install OpenSauced/design, and now all of our components will now be available for any project to leverage. And that's the ultimate goal. It's like that's the other series I want to do on YouTube, which I have planned and written out, which is we have so many projects in our lib folder that could easily be an open source repo. So like we're repeating the same stuff over and over again. So I'm going to do a series I'll write some blog posts on how to create your own open source libraries and then publish those to NPM. And there's a bunch in our utils, like we have for fetching dates and managing colors and changing capitalization. And I have this thing called humanized numbers. Okay. So like when you look at the dashboard, like this right here, like the 1.6K, like adding the K or adding the M for million or whatever, that I call that humanizing numbers. And it's something that I've been using over and over again in multiple projects, but I've never open sourced, which is like a very trivial thing to do in most other libraries, but I like the way I did it. It's tested, and I'm going to open source that in the future.
Nice, do it. Yeah, I use something I found NPM that does it for me. But definitely it's good to have different alternatives, and some are more customizable than others and so forth. So yeah, absolutely, definitely do it. And Dan says Storybook 7 beta is almost ready for next 13 support. Okay, so soon.
Well, we're gonna drag our feet then until it's done.
Yeah. And then drag our feet some more afterwards as well.
Yeah.
The numbers have updated. Is this Linkfree now? Because it says 1,700, which looks right. Oh no, this is JavaScript.
No, this is still JavaScript. It actually might be updated already. And I did do that on beta.
No worries. I was just curious. It's
but also like we're more than happy. Like we do have a Discord. We have issues as well. Anybody has any cool ideas for features? I mean, obviously you have the data. We've been really focused on the use case for companies and open source maintainers. But obviously we do want to make this useful for individual contributors. So this workflow might not make sense for you as an individual user, anybody listening. So happy to get ideas and feedback as well. So we do have OpenSauced feedback, which is going to be our solo discussion for feedback around the project. So we actually, sorry, I'm like tempted to see that okay, so I'd actually need to catch up on here.
I've got loads of notifications to go to. I'm like quite a few days behind, so I definitely need to catch up on mine as well.
Yeah, I totally missed this before the holidays. Or that was after the holidays. Yeah.
No worries. Okay, so we've got about 10 minutes, less than 10 minutes left, because I know Brian's got another call afterwards. And we've almost got, 30 people watching right now. So all of you, please give the video a thumbs up, subscribe below if you haven't already, and go check out Brian's Twitter and YouTube. Links are in the description below as well. If anyone needs anything, let me know. I could drop it in the chat. Okay, so this is link free. This is looking really good. Lots of awesome contributors. So thank you everyone for contributing. Brian, what closing notes would you like to say in the last kind of 8 minutes we got left?
Yeah, I mean, I did want to show something really cool. So this tool is called Campsite. The tool is not really what I want to show, but I wanted to show some Figma designs as well, because we're working on some pretty cool things, and this will probably ship in the next week or so. So again, this is all open source. You can check our PRs. You can check beta, since now you all know exist, to see what's the latest and greatest. But we want to be able to give a one-stop shop for seeing your contributions. Like, we don't want to replace the GitHub profile, but what we want to do is, like, for folks who want to be a little more advanced on what's happening in their project, we want to make that a little more approachable. Obviously, we'd love to do this internally at GitHub. So GitHub, definitely, if you're listening, hit me up. But the idea is that if you want to basically raise your hand and say, hey, I want to contribute to a project, or if you're a project maintainer and you're like, hey, I would love to collaborate with you. Like, Nate is actually the co-creator of Astro. And imagine being able to go to Nate and saying, hey, Nate, I want to collaborate with you. I've got an idea on something we'd love to do. Or imagine a developer advocate. Hey, I've got something we would love to do. So we're going to create this little collaborate feature on your profile. Currently not available. The other thing I want to shout out is this is coming soon, to be able to highlight your contributions. And we want to do this outside of the idea of just PRs. So imagine, I mentioned this earlier, imagine writing a blog post of like, hey, here's the onboarding guide for Linkfree, or here's the onboarding guide for Astro, or here's how I unblocked myself on a cool thing I tried to do. We want to be able to put those in your profile, which we're going to redesign this a little bit so it's a little more discoverable. But the idea is, like, we'll have a place where you can showcase your work, and then eventually hit the generate resume button. So imagine being able to take all your contributions and generate a resume and say, you know what, I've only been self-taught. I've only been doing free code camp, only been doing contributions to Linkfree, but here's it all generated and here's all the wins I have. Like, please job. And I think that's a really, really valid way to approach getting hired. Because one, it shows you can work with a team. Two, it shows that you can be consistent. But also your code quality is going to be like right there front and center as well. And the beauty of that is if you're getting code review, your code quality is going to be higher.
Yes.
So the opportunity there, and we're looking to showcase, like, have this all ship for the purpose of helping people find jobs. Because like, we already have the connection to companies. Now we want to connect to the open source contributors and help them showcase their work. So it's no longer, and I have a strong belief of, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. If you can write code, like, you could potentially get a job. And like, it's intentional why we've been hiring from Nigeria and from Egypt and Romania and Brazil. Like, that's our team. And the reason for that is because I believe you don't need to be in San Francisco to work on open source full time at a company. You can be wherever.
Yeah, exactly right. And you can add value from wherever you are in the world. You just need kind of an internet connection and some sort of computer device. Don't want to be specific that it's a laptop or anything, but you need something, and then you can absolutely add value to the project and the community. So I think that's awesome. I'm just making a note, so please carry on talking for a moment because you've just given me a couple of ideas.
Yeah, so I mean that again. I'll just scroll through some tabs that I've been opening in left and right. So our roadmap, I'll probably end up tinkering around with this today because I realize I haven't touched this since before the holidays. So I'll be doing some updates. We'll be linking some issues. If anybody wants to contribute, the best way to contribute is actually on the hot repo, which always has bugs, always needs some extra ideas and thoughts. Has a little less structure and really approachable with good first issues. I would also mention that we have milestones as well. So if you want to check through what we're working on, what we're going to be shipping, and when, these are sort of soft deadlines. But if you didn't know milestones, you can go to issues and click on milestones and see what our goals are. Our project board is also open source. So we do have a project board with all the bugs as well. So I try to triage those in this one place so people can sort of crank through those. And then these paper cuts are really approachable. They're not good first issues. They do require a little bit more work than a good first issue, but they're still approachable problems as well.
No, I think that all looks really awesome and lots of people to get stuck into, and it's amazing what you've done. I think it's great, and how you turned it into from a side project that you used to live stream and so forth, which you still do, but into now business, and you got full-time people on it, and you got funding. I just think it's great. I mean, what you're gonna do this year is just super exciting. I have a question actually, if we've got time, maybe 1 minute. The contribute button. Or collaborate button on that person's profile, what's it going to do? Is it going to be like a message thing, or is it going to be
Yeah, so this is I'll be upfront too as well. Like Polywork has a very similar feature where you can collaborate. They'll send you a note. I think what I'm going to do with this instead is if two people hit collaborate. So if I hit collaborate on your page and you hit collaborate on my page, then we have the opportunity to go ahead and get introed through a message. For now, it will be, we don't have any messenger service inside of the app, but it'll probably be like an email, like these two people connect and tell them what you want to collaborate on. But the idea is like, I have a project. I found somebody who's already contributing to a project similar, and I would love to collaborate with them and pitch them on working with me for short-term, long-term, or just having a conversation. So think of it like a little more effort than like a Tinder swipe right. It'll just be like, here's my skills and my interests, and I would love to work with you.
No, that sounds really good. I'm super excited. So everyone, don't forget to go start the project on GitHub. Follow Brian on YouTube and Twitter. Links in the description below, so you can keep up to date with all the awesome open sourceness that is going on. Brian, thank you so much for taking the time out today and taking us through the project and giving so much great advice. I know there were still some questions outstanding that we missed in the chat. Apologies, we couldn't fit it all in today. And we were going to get Brian to review the Linkfree project, give us some feedback and suggestions. I know I review all of your projects all the time, so it'll be great. But we'll do that another time when we maybe next month when Brian has more time and we can make some maybe more improvements to Linkfree. Then we won't be so
excellent.
bad.
Well, I'll be sure to sign up, and maybe I'll even create some content around that.
That'd be amazing. Let me know, and I'm more than happy to reshare that content as well. So thank you so much. Brian, if you can stay on for 1 more minute, I'm going to end the stream. I want to thank you personally, but if you need to go, because I know you've got a meeting, then do just drop off. I understand.
Yep, no worries.
Awesome. Everyone, have a great week, and I'll see you in the EddieHub Discord. And say thanks to Brian as well. Okay, let's bring up the holding page. Bye, everyone.